has passed, and I have decided to change the name of this episode to Sewing for a Friend of Corgis and Dragons. Elena's episode 5. I have finished the corgi dress for Elena. Woo! And the next thing I'm going to do is try to go back and complete the dragon. Now, I mentioned, I think in the first video about the dragon, that the pieces for the little scales or fins on the back were these teeny tiny pieces. And so I had traced the pattern on, with the tracing paper in order to preserve the actual pattern itself. And when you go to cut this particular piece out, 14 and 15, when you look at the layout of where it says you're supposed to put these things, where'd it go? Oh, here we are. You can see it says 14 and 15, and they put it, why this tiny little, you could have made this bigger. I mean, look at all this space. Why is it so small? Anyway, I just took it to mean that you would put those pieces on there and then cut them out. So I thought, well, do I really need to, well, never mind what I thought. What I ended up doing was cutting separate little pieces out of the scales and then pinning those separate pieces to the fabric. And then I was having trouble feeding the fins into the machine. The machine wanted to eat it because of the type of fabric this is. And so what I decided to do, or to try, is to trace these out, and then instead of cutting them out of the fabric into small pieces, I'm gonna leave these pieces together and try sewing the seams in the curves while it's one big piece, and then going back and cutting it out after I've actually sewed the pieces together. I'm hoping that will help solve the issue because it'll be a bigger piece of fabric to work with, and it will probably be less likely for the machine to want to eat it because it's not a tiny little piece that sometimes slides under the foot plates. And gonna do the same thing for the larger scales as well. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so I tried just having this on here and then tried to trace using an iron erasable pen, but then I realized, no, it's just not, I'm gonna ruin the tissue paper if I try to do it that way. So what I did was I went back to the tracing paper pieces that I had, and I basically just traced around it 10 times, and that is what I'm gonna go with. And I am debating right now on whether or not to try to put some interfacing on the back of this side to give it a little bit of body when I'm trying to run it through the machine. I think what I'll do to test that is I'll go ahead and I'll try to do one of these because I have plenty of the gold fabric left if something goes wrong here. I'll go ahead and try sewing the scales together, and if the sewing machine is nice and doesn't eat it, then I'll go ahead and I won't worry with the interfacing. But if it does start to give me trouble, then what I'll do is I will try the interfacing. Then I will try to go back and sew these pieces and then cut them out. And actually I might start with the larger scales to test it out, because if I mess something up, it's a lot less time to retrace these 6 than those 10. Okay. Oh, I just realized that I have black thread in here from a previous project, so I need to swap it out with this lighter color. If you're curious about what I'm got on the television right now, it's past episodes of Say Yes to the Dress. It's one of those shows that I like seeing all the different dresses and how you can just visually see what dresses really fit some of the brides. I'm not so keen on the drama sometimes that goes along with it. I think it's probably like most reality shows where there is some sort of instructions people are given to kind of like maybe ham things up or emphasize parts of their personality, or, you know, play up what's the word, conflicts in style or whatever. But I like it well enough. You can play in the background and I can just listen for the cues that the next dress is the next dress is on the bride, and I can just look at the bride and try to ignore the drama. And every once in a while I'm really impressed by a dress and I think, you know what, if I were to get married again, that would be a lovely dress. But I love my wedding dress so much, and maybe I'll find a picture and figure out a way to how to show it on screen here. My grandmother made it for me, and I thought it was absolutely beautiful. And it was made of brocade, and there was no lace, no beading, no ruffles. It was all about the gold thread and the floral pattern that was woven into the fabric. And I actually saw the fabric and fell in love with the fabric first before I had a pattern that I knew that I wanted. And so I bought like the whole bolt, and I think there was like 13 yards on there, which is just, now that I think about it, a rather large amount of fabric. So when I finally picked a dress, my grandmother not only made me the wedding dress, but she also made me a going away dress in it, which was absolutely stunning. And again, didn't need any other further embellishments, no lace, no tulle, no beads, no ruffles. It was all about the fabric. And I think that's something that's fairly common with people. And I've got my phone flipped around, and so I keep looking at the wrong end of the phone to make eye contact, but maybe I'm looking at the right place now. Where was I? Oh yes, my wedding dress. And I just felt so pretty in it. And it was off the shoulder, and it had these long sleeves, and it was like princess seams, A-line. I didn't have a big like fluffy can or, you know, the petticoat thing underneath it. I just really thought it was a beautiful dress. Still a beautiful dress. And although I occasionally see dresses on Say Yes to the Dress that I think, ooh, that might have been a good dress. You know, that's pretty. I still haven't seen one that I would rather have worn than the one that I did, the one that my grandma made for me. Okay, getting sniffly here. So now, I have my machine rethreaded, so I'm gonna go ahead now and find some test fabric to get the bobbin thread pulled up through. It seems I had not actually threaded. I changed the thread, but I had not actually threaded the needle. Ooh, excellent. There, it just went right through. That doesn't always happen for me. Okay, so here we go. I'll start with this one, and hopefully you can see, you might not be able to because of the setup here, but I'm going to start right there, line that up. Okay, So far, nothing's being eaten. Oh, but I do realize I have the foot that I have on it right now has the guard on it, and so that's going to be a problem for me when I try to turn the curves. So take that out there. But oh, I just got a little bit of a bird nest issue there. Okay, so I am going to now stop to call my mom because this is a day of the week that I normally call my folks, and so I'm gonna call my folks and check in on them, and then I will come back and swap out the foot and try my experiment again with the scales. Okay. It worked. I was able to actually stitch the fins, scales, whatever they are. I managed to get it to do that, and it did not get eaten by my machine. Yay! So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and do the same for the small scales, and then I will cut them apart. All right, I have managed to sew the rest of the scales and not had to pull the fabric out. My machine didn't eat it. I am so happy about that. Now comes the tricky bit, and that is figuring out the best way to cut these apart. I think that, yeah. You know the saying, they've got their work cut out for them? Yeah, guess I do. Very excited, making progress on the dragon. I have stay stitched around the holes for the leg holes, and next step will be to attach these, then pull those through the body, and then the same thing for the other side, and then stitch the little legs shut. Yeah, so I'm excited and I like the sparkle, and so far nothing else has been eaten. Okay, I forgot exactly where we left off, but I decided that it would probably be a good idea to go ahead and go back and cut out the pieces again for the smaller bits of the dragon, and do as I did with the scales, and that is basically sew out or cut out blocks or squares that contain the tracing, and then sew the seams, and then cut the edges out after that, or cut the shape after I've actually sewn it, because it actually worked pretty well with the scales, and I think it really is going to need that for the horns and a few other of the pieces. So that's what I'm going to do next, and hopefully I will start making some real progress on this. Thanks. All right, so I have the horns and the tail spikes. I wasn't sure which tail spike I liked better, so I went ahead and did both of them. So once I get to the attachment of that, I'll flip a coin and decide which one of those I like better. But yeah, okay, next, sewing some seams. Well, I made some progress, but I finally got to the point where I thought, you know what, I need to test out the interfacing on this fabric to see if it will melt and see if I can get it to stick. So I put this down here. Is one of the ones I'm not going to use. I'm going to retrace this on a block, as I mentioned. And so I just cut off a scrap of interfacing, and I thought, no problem. I put my pressing cloth on there. I have my mister to mist it so it's not too wet, not too dry. And then I pressed and pressed and pressed, and then I figured out when I flipped it over that I had put the interfacing the wrong way, and because it was upside down, it is now firmly attached to my pressing cloth instead of to my test fabric. Okay. Yeah, if we can't laugh at ourselves, you know, life is really hard. So I'm going to go cut another piece of interfacing and make sure that I have it flipped the correct way and find a new place on my pressing cloth to try to reapply it. Yay, it worked! Yeah, so I cut another piece of the interfacing, made sure it was the correct side down, and did the ironing thing. I also noticed that it doesn't seem to have dulled, ironing it doesn't seem to have dulled the fabric. And just to make sure, I will come over here and put it next to the unironed fabric. And I don't really think that you can tell all that much. Well, maybe it took a little bit of the shine off, or it could just be that it's flat now. Oh, I think that's what it is. It's just flat in the spot where the interfacing is, and so it's not catching the light quite the way the other one was. If this had the interfacing on it, I think it would probably look like this too, but it's still pretty shiny, so that's not bad. And now I know that I can make it work. I just need to be careful with the interfacing and make sure I have it the correct way. Okay, excellent. So I will go ahead and attack the head of the dragon. Time will pass. Okay, I have done now the fourth side, and you can see how I kind of did what I was mentioning about laying it on top of a piece of broadcloth to stabilize it. So now I'm going to cut it. I am picking up again today with the head of the dragon, which for some reason I have named Francine. Why a Chinese dragon would be named Francine, I have no idea, but that's what she told me her name was. So what I'm doing now, I have already finished her little horns and I have stitched them down. I put her lovely little eyes in, and now I am sewing up the back of her head here. The instructions actually said to do that before attaching the horns, and I really don't know how I would have attached the horns without the ability to sort of still reach in from the back side of the skin there on the head. If I am ever crazy enough to attempt to make another one of these little babies, I am definitely going to rewrite the instructions for myself so that they make more sense for me, and it makes things go together easier. But anyway, update on grading. I am completely finished with grading for the semester. Yay! Which means that now I have more time to finish my sewing projects. Yay! All right, time has passed, and it is now time for me to move on to constructing the body of the dragon named Francine. And one of the things they tell you to do in the instructions that I am not going to do this time, because when I tried to put it together the first time, it gave me such trouble, is I am not going to go ahead and cut out these little cutouts. So there's cutouts on the body itself and then cutouts on the inner leg so that you can stitch them together. And then once you get the fronts and back, or the sides together, then you can stuff the leg through the holes here. And I found that it was incredibly hard because of how small the holes were. And again, this fabric is not friendly for this kind of thing. And so it just made it kind of a mess. So what I plan to do is I plan to go ahead and I'm going to pin it, then I'm going to sew it, and then I'm going to cut a hole out. And I will probably also I think I will try and see how well I can sew it without having no, never mind. It didn't work the last time. I should just go ahead. I know it's going to work, so stick with that. And that is I'm going to put some of the broadcloth cotton underneath there, then pin it, sew it, and then I can just cut around the broadcloth, but that will hopefully stabilize it a little bit and make it easier to feed through the sewing machine. So that is what I'm going to do next, is attach these two legs. Back shortly. So not that much time has passed. And I did as I said I was gonna do. I put the broadcloth on the back and I laid it on there. I sewed it, worked really well. But then I realized that I had not followed the instructions as far as how to actually lay this out. So what I should have done, instead of attaching it on this side, is I should have attached it on the other side with the two shiny sides together. So now I'm gonna have to unpick this, which I hate having to do, especially on this type of fabric. And then I'm gonna need to do it over again. And I also am going to need to relay out the pattern pieces because I laid them out wrong. But that's okay. I am making progress. I am learning. That is what I did this for, because I wanted to learn how to do this. So I'll be back. Okay, this is actually how I should have had the fabric pinned together. So I am now going to do what I did before, since I've unpicked this, and put the broadcloth underneath there and stitch around where the hole is supposed to be. And I'll do that for the front and the back leg, and then I will snip holes in there to allow for the legs to get stuffed. And then after I do that, then I will need to actually sew the exteriors on each of the legs before I then sew the sides together at the top, and then the belly will come towards the end. And of course I will have to take all these lovely scales and pin those down like that before I then put this on top of this to sew that back seam. That back seam has me nervous because of how thick it will be going through the 2 layers of the scale, and then you've got the layer each of this, plus if I was going to use stabilizer of some sort, then there's that. So yeah, but that's a bridge that we have not come to yet. So what we're going to work on now is just the next step, and the next step is getting these legs attached. Okay, inner legs attached. So you can see here that I sewed around. I left just where the marking was for the hole. And what I did to line things up was I ran a pin through this and then checked on the back where it came through. Then I pinned it at that point, and then I pinned further out, and then I took that middle pin out, and that made it easier to go around. I also have a tendency when I'm trying to do something this tight, turning circle on, I basically sew a stitch, shift a little bit, sew a stitch, shift a little bit, and that helps it look a little bit better and be a little bit rounder. Okay, now according to the instructions, what I need to do is I need to cut these holes out. Then I'm going to pull this leg through the hole, and then I am going to attach the inner part of the legs, and then push it back through and stuff it. All right, I have the legs sewn and attached and sewn, and then I went and I have basted the scales along the top here. I think I probably have more on there than they called for, and that's because I wanted to, or we didn't want the wings, and so there would have been a blank spot without filling in with the extra scales. But I basted it, and as I have been doing with all the other pieces, I put this broadcloth underneath it, then I pinned them, and then I basted just little scales along there. And next I am trying to decide if I want to cut or trim the base, this off the back, but I think I'm going to go ahead and leave it on there to serve as a stabilizing agent when I go to attach the other side, which is, here we are. So I think I will go ahead and leave it on there, pin this, sew the back seam or the spine seam, and then I will look at trimming the broadcloth backing off. I am feeling great about this so far. I don't want to mess with that or say anything too soon, but I am enjoying this now that I've kind of figured out some tricks. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I managed to sew the belly seams without having to use the understitching or the stabilizing broadcloth. So I have it all stitched up now. So all I have to do now is pull its inside out through the neck and figure out a way to stuff the legs. Because it would be easier to stuff them if I stuffed them now, but then I'd never get it out the neck. So I've got to pull it all out, and I've tried, and that is going to be kind of a tight fit. So I might go ahead and back off this a little bit to give myself a bit more room to do that with. So time has passed, enough time for me to try to stuff Francine after I had turned her completely inside out. That did not work very well. I couldn't get anything really down into her tail, and I was finding it impossible to get any stuffing into her leg. So what I figured out that I could do is I basically pulled her inside out again and then stuffed her tail and kept stuffing and stuffing until I got to her, not shoulder, haunches? Anyway, and so I had it completely turned inside out, and I would stuff it, and then I would slip a little bit further and further down until I got her legs where I could actually reach and get them stuffed. Now, I don't know if this method would work if you had, say, a woven fabric, but because Francine is knit, she's got some give to her, so it was easier than I thought it would be to stuff her a little bit at a time and just sort of unfurl her around the stuffing. So I do have a little bit of stuffing in her little back leg there. Don't look too close, her feet don't match. That just gives her personality. Anyway, so I will continue stuffing. Once I finish her legs, then I'll stuff some more and furl her some more until I get to her front legs. But this is looking better than I thought it was going to when I first started trying to stuff it. Okay. Hello, time has passed, and unfortunately, in the time that has passed, our air conditioning has gone out. So that means we have all the windows open and all the sounds, and though the air is cooler, it is a bit more humid. But thankfully, we are supposed to have the man come by today to fix the air conditioning. In the meantime, I will talk about where I am at on the dragon. So Francine is now stuffed, but we have to put Francine's head on. And when I went to do this, I realized that this just stitching to the neck without anything on it was really hard because the head is slick and it's got that tough skin that I have to poke through. And I was afraid also that it was going to be wobbly, that the head was going to be too heavy. So what I decided to do is I had actually cut the two different styles for the tail piece. And one of them is just the flat scale that you stick on and stitch down. And that was going to be much easier, I thought, than doing the other tail option, which is more like a little spike that goes, actually this thing, that goes along the tail. And so I had this piece already, stitched up and turned inside out, and I thought, aha, maybe I can use this to help stabilize. So what I intend to do is I'm going to, and you can see I've kind of got it started here, I'm going to stitch this to the neck, and that's going to make that neck piece more stable and have a little bit more body to it. And also hopefully having this on here is going to help keep the head from lolling one way or the other. So that's what I'm gonna do next. I'm going to finish attaching this and then give a go at attaching Francine's little head. I give you Francine in all her shiny glory. Now, I will say that she is very precariously perched here on this pillow, and I haven't gotten her to stay on my shoulder without taking a literal nosedive into the floor. But I think she's really cute, and she's done, and I have learned a lot from making her. So one last little look around here with the camera, and yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so it seems fairly common for people who make things on YouTube to talk about things afterwards and whether or not it worked, whether they liked it, whether they would do it again, that kind of thing. And when it comes to Francine, I will say that I at one point thought there's no way I'm ever gonna get this made. It's just too hard. It's just no. And so I had to set it aside for a while, but I did come back to it. I did have to make some changes to the pattern, or not the pattern, but the way things were cut out and the way I sewed them together. And she is way overstuffed. Her head is too heavy, and so she's got kind of the floppy neck problem. But she is pretty and she is done, and I can look at her and think, wow, she may not be perfect, but I made that, and that makes me really happy. It also makes me really happy that I did something that I didn't think I could do. And yes, you can see some of the stitches in her, and yes, her head is a little wobbly, and yeah, maybe her legs are a little scrawny. But you know, you see all those things and you see the stitches in some places, and it's like, you know what? It's like a painting, right? It's like a piece of art. You can see the brush strokes. You can see in some places where maybe the painter had to cover something up that didn't work, but that doesn't mean it's not still pretty and it's not still valuable. So I'm very excited with this. And while I would not do it exactly the same again, I'm not saying I would never make this particular pattern again. I think the big thing that was the issue was, although I picked beautiful fabrics for it that I think look really cute, they were seriously so painful to work with. I don't ever want to make anything with that fabric again. So while I might make it again, it would definitely not be in this foil knit, whatever it is. So I'm going to send Francine and the corgi dress and the scraps from both of those projects to Elena. And if Elena wants to make Francine a sister, more power to her. I'm happy to give her the tracing and the patterns so she can do that. But that is finally it for this episode, which is way long. I have no idea because I haven't rewatched the clips yet, but I am going to now stop here, go upload all of the videos to my machine so I can string them together, and then I'm going to plot my next project. Bye.